Hello everyone, welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. In this one, we're finally going over the new heroes from the Hunted, starting with Fang Dressai of Blades. Overall, I think Fang is the least performing hero from the new set. Syndra has already won a bunch, and obviously the new assassins are going to be really good because they're assassins and they use stealth cards. But Fang kind of hasn't really found his ground. I think Fang is pretty good, but the problem is with some of the cards he has to play to make his deck really work. There are a lot of different iterations of Fang. A full red Fang, a Fang that plays more blues. This one is on a little more blues than obviously the no blue list, but not as many I think as some of the ones other people are playing. I think this is more of a mixture of them, a red line list that also has the consistency if you don't draw extremely well early to go at least to like some mid game point, which I think is where Fang wants to sit. He wants to play a more, he's not the fastest aggro deck, but he can definitely stack up to beat the slower decks really easily because of how much damage he can put through that some of the aggro decks can't do versus some of the control decks. So I think that's really where Fang shines. But with that, let's get started. Fang Dressai of Blades is a 4 intellect, 40 health Royal Draconic Warrior hero. He has two abilities. The first is when he hits a marked hero, you make a fealty token, which you'll need for your second ability, which is if you control 3 or more fealty tokens, all of your daggers cost 1 less to activate, which is really important for Fang because obviously he's a warrior. He's all about his weapon. Daggers recently are getting a ton of support because of this set. All of the Draconic reacts only target daggers, so you'll have to play daggers for your weapons. Thankfully, he's a really good set of them, but that does limit you from playing things like sabers or something like Hot Streak, which are conventional good warrior weapons. Although you do want these to be Draconic. Draconic is all about having Draconic chain links, doing Draconic things, so a non-Draconic weapon would be pretty bad. There is one other dagger, however, we are not playing it because we are on 2 Obsidian Fire Vein, of course because they're Draconic mainly, but their effect is really powerful. They're a one-handed warrior Draconic dagger. They have a once per turn action to attack, and if you play a Draconic card, this chain link, that means a Draconic attack reaction or an instant, you gain +1 and go again, which helps you go incredibly wide. Very good once you have your ability active on Fang with the 3 fealty tokens, because since these would come in for 0, since they're free 0 for 1, you can easily convert all of your 0 cost reactions into a pump and go again on the daggers and more damage, which is really good. These, you can think of them as a 0 for 2 go again if you have your ability active, but they're a 1 for 2 go again if you don't, which is pretty bad. The rest of the equipment are pretty standard for warriors. Crown of Providence is the best helmet you can be playing. Once we look at the sideboard, we'll talk about some helmets you can play instead versus certain matchups, but for most matchups, it'll be the Crown. The chest we're going with is Grains of Bloodspill. A lot of the redline lists are playing Vest of the First Fist, and I think it's a pretty comparable option. It's really nice with a lot more attacks in the list, and those redline lists have to play a lot more attacks. The red line lists want to make 3 fealty as fast as possible, which is a pretty good idea, but since this list is made in a way where it can go a little later, it doesn't have to win the game as fast as the red line lists, you can play the block on greens and convert some of your extra blues into extra resources. Brave Forge Bracers are the best gloves you can play. Since Iron Song verses only work on swords, these actually work on your daggers, and Gallantry Golds aren't the best. So Brave Forge Racers are just the premier option because they're 3 block and actually work. And then Valiant Dynamos are shoes of choice. Yes, you can play Dragon Scaler Flight Paths. I think you could probably even play Snapdragon Scalers if you wanted to. But Valiant Dynamos just helps you, again, go later. The longer the game is, the more value these get, and you're going to be swinging with your weapons twice a turn pretty much all the time. I do see a reason to not play these in the red line list because you're not swinging both weapons every turn, but you should be planning on trying to in a list more like this where you are playing some blues. But there are times where you don't have to. So if you did want to play Snapdragon Scalers instead, you can definitely do that over the Valiant Dynamos. Just Or if you don't own Valiant Dynamos, to be honest, because they are very expensive, you can easily play Snaps instead. But the rest of the equipment I would play 100%. You could also play Vest of the First Fist, again, if you don't have Grains, but I think Grains is pretty cheap. And then these two are, I think, expensive, but they're kind of necessary. Before we take a look at the... Actually, you know what? Instead of, looking at the rest of the equipment, let's just take a look at the main board, because I think it's pretty simple to explain, and the inventory you're barely bringing in. So we'll go over this main 60 and then talk about the sideboard. So what Fang wants to be doing is getting 3 fealty sort of as fast as possible. The reason I say sort of is because this list is built in a way where it can actually play without, but the red line list needs to make 3 as fast as possible. And this is sort of based on it. And of course you do want to be at 3, because if you're at 3, you can just convert your whole hand into damage. So yeah, get to 3 as fast as possible. But a lot of the lists, mainly the red line list, aren't on all of the ways you can mark or make fealty, mainly because they can't really play the 1 cost reacts. In this list, we're taking a very similar idea. We're not playing any of the 1 cost reactions. We're trying to just play all the cards that cost 0. In fact, in the main board, there's only 1 card that actually does cost 1, which is Provoke, and that's a blue, and you're probably never playing it. For our reactions, we're just playing the standard suite of 0 cost Draconic red reactions. Affirm Loyalty is just the best one because it makes a fealty token straight up. Blistering Blade comes in for an extra damage if it's your second Draconic Chain Link. Fire and Brimstone does cost 2, but it'll probably be free most of the time. Lets you swing an extra time with your daggers. You want to find this one after you're online with Fang, and you want to have this on a turn where you have a bunch of reacts. You can swing with your weapons twice consistently. Hunt's End is only active after you're at 3 fealty, but it's the biggest pump, and it does still block 3, so it's perfectly fine. Long Whisker Loyalty gives you a lot of things. It can mark, it can give you bonus damage, it can even give you an extra swing, which is really nice. It's pretty hard to get to the 3, because saving it for your 3rd swing is pretty hard to do. But, or your 3rd attack, you need a chain starter to actually get to the 3 consistently, but if you can, it's fine. Just, it's best on 2. Having a starter into this is really nice. And then Searing Gaze is the last one, and if you have 2 or more chain links, it adds an on hit to mark, which is very good. This is the second best one after Affirm Loyalty. Sometimes it's better because you have cards like Hunt to the Ends of Wrath, or you have cards like For the Dressai, but a very good card. Another thing that you can do is the instants. This deck is playing all 3 of the main Draconic instants. Pledge Fealty just makes a fealty token really good. The instants work as if you play them during the window where you're already swinging with your weapon, they give it the +1 and go again. So this makes a fealty and just lets you continue your turn. Tooth of the Dragon is very similar, but gives you the 3 power on your next attack, which is really nice, especially with a lot of these chain enders. If you can find a way to mark the opponent, this can pump you up to try to guarantee that a chain ender is going to hit. And Proclaim Vengeance is a marking effect. You don't really care about the Arachne effect on this card because it's just a mark. It can convert things into fealty, which is really nice. It's good with For the Dressai. It's pretty good with Hunt to the Ends of Wrath. It's also good with like March of Loyalty or any of your other synergy. Good with your weapons as well. For our attacks, we are playing pretty much all of the Go Again. We are missing 1 copy of Hunt to the Ends of Wrath, but that's perfectly fine. Blaze Headlong at 3 is sort of the best one. If you play a red, it gets Go Again. It's the easiest to give Go Again, and you're going to be on 3 of it in pretty much any Draconic deck that you actually do build. Oath of Loyalty is a good card. It's a 3-block, 4 power, Go Again always. It has to be the first thing you do, though, which is perfectly fine in Fang, since if you can, you want to start with one of these attacks. But you can only do Draconic things until the end of your turn. That can be a little tough with some of the cards in this deck, because you want to, you need Draconic links, and you can't really use your fealties because you need to be at 3. So you can't go Oath into like a Rabble, but Oath still lets you swing with your daggers and play all of your Draconic reacts, which is generally the main play line. We are on 3 March of Loyalty just because it's a 4 power 3 block. If we make a fealty in a turn, it gets go again. Pretty good with Pledge of Fealty. Pretty good with Proclaim Vengeance. The way it works is if you hit a marked hero, you'll make the fealty, which would give this the go again, which is pretty good. And other than that, it's an okay. It's more of an ender than a starter, but it can be like middle of the chain if you really needed it to. It's also just a 3 blocks, which is really good. And then we're only on 2 copies of Hunt to the Ends of Wrath. This card is only in here because it is a starter. You could play an extra one of this over one of the March of Loyalties, but considering that this only blocks 2, I don't really like it that much. Versus heroes that aren't Arachne, it's literally just a 0 for 2 go again. But against Arachne, you do get the advantage of the on attack auto mark and then guarantee that you get the 2 power. Sometimes it is a 0 for 4 go again if the enemy's marked, which is really good because that can push over a breakpoint to hit and make that fealty token. But other than that, it's just a starter so that we can play this and then swing with a dagger and immediately do our reacts, because all the reacts gain a bonus if they're the second chain link or higher. And then the last Draconic attack in the deck is for the Drakai. This gives you a fealty token if you're attacking a marked hero, which is really good if you leave the opponent marked or you just mark them, because this makes a fealty token, and then on hit of that hero, because they're still marked, you'll get the fealty token. So this is a breakpoint they probably want to block. This thing can get you 2 fealty really quickly. That's all of the Draconic cards in the deck. So let's talk about the non-Draconic cards. We do have one non-Draconic attack in Ravenous Rabble. This is simply because we're only playing 12 blue cards. Very similar to how Fi could easily play Rabble. He didn't play many blue cards, so you can play Rabble pretty easily. It sucks when you get it early, but oh well. It's a red starter for your Blaze Headlong. It's not Draconic, which can suck sometimes, but that's okay. Savor Bloodshed is a really, really good pump, especially with things like Proclaim Vengeance, because you mark them before you hit them. Savor Bloodshed gives your next dagger attack +4, and when you hit a marked hero with a dagger this turn, you draw a card, or the next time you do, which is really good on turns you need to make that fealty. You can guarantee that you make the fealty. And again, especially with Proclaim Vengeance, this is a really good combo. You play Savor Bloodshed for free, pump up a dagger, swing at the dagger, use the Proclaim to give the dagger the +1 go again for 6. If they put 2 cards in front of it, that's fine. You then swing at the other dagger, play whatever pump on it. Then you can convert that, hopefully, into a hit on a marked hero to draw your card. So this card's really good in Fang. The last red in the deck is the red Twist and Turn. This is another 0 for 4 pump, but it gives your next dagger swing. On hit, it can attack again. Pretty good once you actually get the 3 fealty online. It lets you convert 3 react hands into 3 attack hands, which is a pretty good thing. It's also a 0 for 4 pump, so it is above rate. It turns on your Blaze Headlong. I personally really like the card. The last cards in the main board are blues. We are on blue Twist and Turn just because it's a playable blue late game. Power Stance because it can pump up your daggers. It's really good on turns we can get off bonus attacks with daggers, either with Long Whisker Loyalty or Fire and Brimstone. But other than that, it's just a blue 3-block. Glint the Quicksilver is another go again effect that can draw us a card sometimes if it reprises. It's just one of the better blues we can be playing. You don't need to play. I think the blues you need to play are probably Power Stance and Twist and Turn if you were playing blues, but you don't really need Glint. Same as Provoke. Provoke's in here because it's a good disruptive effect that we can actually play late game to get cards out of our opponent's hand. Or if we draw too many blues, it's a card that we can actually play. But Provoke itself isn't really the best card for our deck because it does cost 1 and we can't cheap it. And we can't make it any cheaper. But it is still a very good card. It does block 3. So we're playing it. You can play whatever blue block 3 warrior cards you want. Draconic does not have any. Fang doesn't have access to any Draconic blue cards like Fi or Dromai does, because there are no Draconic warrior cards printed in the Hunted that are blue. They're all printed at red. Actually, there's no Draconic cards in the Hunted printed at blue. They're all printed at red. So you don't really have access to too many blues in Fang, especially because you don't have access to the old ninja cards like Syndra does. And even then, Syndra isn't even playing blues. She's just playing Warmongers, which you can't play because you have a lot of non-attack actions. But I do like this lineup of blues for the 4 that we are playing. You can play Provoke or Glint, something else instead of them, and that's perfectly fine. Hunt a Killer is a really nice card. It does cost 1, but it is a blue that helps you mark. So you could easily slot that one in instead, and that one's also from the Hunted, which is pretty nice. Overall, the main board, I think, is a pretty good package. It's a good mix of that full red line list and that slower, more blue-centric list. I really do like the way this plays out. It has a good mix of actual attacks and reactions to planned weapons. It can feel a little bad in the early game, but so does every other Fang deck. But once you get 2-3 fealty tokens, you just hit the ground and you just start going, and you can really easily kill an opponent because now all of your cards are just so much better if your daggers are free. All the reacts become +1 go again to your daggers. All the attacks become so live, and it's just incredibly powerful. Also, Hunt's End becomes live, and this card is really bad if you draw it early because you can't play it. Finally, let's take a look at the inventory, starting with the equipment. For helmets, we are on a Kabuto of Imperial Authority. This is a brand new helmet from the Hunted. It is a 2-block blade break helmet that when it defends, your opponent can't attack with weapons. This is the same slot as Balance of Justice. If you wanted to play Balance over this, you can. I would not play both because of card slots. You could probably find a cut. I could see a world where you don't end up playing Tunic and you play both helmets, but most decks that play Balance, I feel, or most decks you'd want Balance against, I think Kabuto works well into. Maybe except like a Cilio, but you probably want both your AB into a Cilio. Or you could bring a Spellfray instead of one of these. We'll talk about that when we talk about the AB. But I really like Kabuto versus those matchups where their weapons do matter, because a lot of them are matchups where Balance is probably pretty good against. So a lot of the brutes you could go with either because you stop claws with Kabuto, or you just draw an extra card on their Blood Rush turn. Against Ninja, they can draw some cards sometimes. I guess I'd rather have Balance against Syndra, but against some of the other ones, Kabuto could be better. There's just a lot of things that can actually, also against Ninja, they're not drawing 2 cards very consistently anymore, so you can probably just play Crown of Providence against Syndra and be fine. But personally, I do like Kabuto over Balance in Warrior. It really just depends on what you're playing against. Final Spring Tunic is here for our matchups that go pretty late. Any matchup we want to bring in our Jagged Edges, we're probably bringing in Final Spring Tunic. That's pretty much the determining factor of when I bring in Tunic. You don't need Tunic. You could play something else instead, but I personally like it when I do need to bring in Jagged Edge. And then finally for equipment, we have Norrune Boots and Norrune Hood. These are here because I feel like the chest pieces are a little more... Also, you can bring in Tunic versus Arcane matchups. That's notable too, to pay for an extra AB. But Norrune Boots, Norrune Hood are just arcane damage prevention. You could play one if you wanted to. I believe the red line list play one, but since you have some amount of blues, you can actually pay for multiple AB, so I thought 2 would be a good number. If you wanted, you could play a Spellfray over one of these. Either it be head or boot, that's up to you. If you play boot into Runeblade, that means you're losing Valiant Dynamos, but also they're pretty fast decks, so are you going to get the chance to reset Dynamos so many turns? Probably not. You could replace the head, but the head blocks really well, has a lot of bonus effects. Probably the shoe, so I'd play Norrune Tiara, or not Norrune Tiara, Spellfray Tiara, if you wanted to play one Spellfray, but I do like 2 AB. For the actual cards in the sideboard, I already talked about a little bit of Jagged Edge, so we'll go over that one. If you're playing against an Illusionist, you're going to bring in Jagged Edge. They're really the only heroes right now that have so much prevention, and it just can kill them. That's literally the whole reason. You can just blow their whole board up. So I'd bring in Jagged Edge with Tunic in the Illusionist, mainly into the Enigma matchup, but the present matchup is pretty good too. Our main D-reactive choice is Shelter from the Storm. This one gives us... is just the best D-react. Now, I know they're expensive. This is going to be the CNC of the next week, or the next month, when I talk about how you can replace this card. If you don't own Shelter from the Storms, you can just play Sink Below. They're very comparable, but Shelter from the Storm gives you a little more value into those Runeblade matchups that you have some hard time blocking because a lot of your cards are red, or even some of your Ninja matchups because this can prevent their pings of 1 damage. I could also see a world where you play like one of these and two Sink Below. I think some split of them is also fine. Just have 3 0 for 4D reacts in some amount. Either it be 3 shelter, 3 sink, 1 shelter, 2 sink, 1 sink, 2 shelter. Maybe not that last one. I think that's probably the worst number. Either full shelter, full sink, or 1 shelter, 2 sink, probably. We do have another D-React in our sideboard. That all you got is just going to come in versus our faster matchups. Personally, I also, about sideboarding out, I didn't mention it. I'll put it in the notes. But Jagged Edge probably comes in over Hunt to the Ends of Wrath versus those matchups because you're going to have a little more time to set up more Go Again and make the fealty token, so you probably don't need the Hunt. It's also pretty weak. Same as That All You Got. Any matchup I want That All You Got, I'd probably go down the Hunt to the Ends of Wrath. Simply just, it's the easiest replacement. That All You Got is just good versus aggro matchups that we can actually proc it against because it gives us an extra card to just crack back at our opponent and it protects us a little bit. It's a little iffy at 3 right now because a lot of decks aren't playing too many 2s, but it is a card I think is good. And then if you want to bring in Shelter, I mean, just probably cut like March of Loyalty or something. I don't know. It's a little hard to actually pull off versus faster matchups. So the D-Reacts will probably be good cut for that. And finally, we have Snag. Snag is just here versus New. All my homies hate New. That deck is so obnoxious. I hate it so much. I don't think you'll have a problem dealing with Count Your Blessings. Also, if you're concerned about Count Your Blessings, you could just bring in the whole sideboard. And you're going to get more damage, more protection. And that you got to actually procs against New. So against New, bring in the whole board. But all my homies hate New. I'm going to put 3 Snag in every deck until that hero's gone, because I hate it so much. If you don't have any New at your locals and you only play your locals, you can play Poison the Well instead if you were that scared of Count Your Blessings, but this is just your favorite tech card. Snag is currently my favorite tech card. When you bring in Snag, I would recommend going down Provoke. It's not that I don't want... It's not that like New can, I don't know, like, it's mainly because I don't want them playing the Provoke. Like, you can fat stack against New, and in fact you should. Like, you should probably play this whole board against New just because the defensives are really good and Jagged Edge is just more damage. But like, one, you might be adding too many cards if you don't go down something, and like, I don't care if they glint, I just won't block the dagger. I don't care if they power stance, their daggers still cost 2, it's pretty inefficient. If they twist and turn, yeah, their dagger gets pumped, but like, they're not going to swing with it again. Provoke just takes a card out of your hand. I would cut Provoke if you're playing against New for the Snag. And then if you want to put these in, because you don't have to, you can. I do like That Or You Got in Shelter into New. Maybe you don't need Jagged Edge, but go down 3 Provoke, add these 8. It's probably good enough versus New. But mainly the Snag is going to come in over the Provoke, always into New, because you don't want her to play this card against you. But with that, that is going to be the end of the video. Fang is a hero that I really like from this set. Personally, I like Cinder a little more after playing her a bit more. But Fang, I think, is just really cool. If you wanted to play Fang, I wouldn't fault you for it. Even though he's not the best hero right now, I think Fang definitely has a lot more room to experiment with. And I think in the future, he could definitely just get some cards that are insanely powerful. That will help him so much. The Arachnes, both of the new ones, are very good. I think maybe we'll do one of them next week instead of doing Cinder right away. Sort of split it up. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good day. Goodbye.